My name is Caleb. I'm the race director. I appreciate you all joining on the call. This is the first time we've done a crew specific meeting. We've covered crews in our runner virtual planning nights for multiple years now, but with some of the changes involving a little bit more detail, we wanted to do this specific meeting to kind of cover a few of the changes, but also mostly just be a Q&A session for you guys to ask your specific questions. I have a general list of things I'd like to cover, just that feel like the obvious places to hit. We're going to go through those, and then we'll spend as much time in Q&A as we need. Throughout the process, just to keep things relevant, if you have a question about what we're talking about, you don't need to wait until the end. So we're going to start by just covering the course, just helps kind of set the tone for all the rest of the details we're going to cover. If you have a course question while we're doing that, please ask it. If it's a question about something else like camping or shuttling or pacing, let's wait till we hit that section and then we can cover it then. If you do have a question, just pop off mute or you can drop it in the chat, either one. If it's in the chat, I'll read the question out just so folks watching later can actually hear what the question was. But don't be afraid to pop off mute. We've all been through this for a long time with, COVID and recent memories, and Zoom meetings are part of our lives. So don't be shy. I get to hear myself talk in my head 24 hours a day, so any breaks on that is much appreciated. All right, so let's cover the course. Hopefully you all have had a chance to look at this. The red lines on this map represent runners. The blue lines represent vehicle course access for the crew accessible aid stations. I'm going to frame this real quick. Up here is the town of Buena Vista. This is where I happen to live and where the pre-race meeting is going to take place. Down here at the bottom end of this valley is Salida. This is the other main town in the valley that a lot of folks will be staying at and using as a home base for the race. You'll notice the course is pretty equally split between them, BV and Salida. So either one provide good access to the course. Generally, all of the directions are just going to go in order. So they're going to start from the start and kind of go from there. So if you're looking at the crew manual or the website, you'll see that reflected. It's also how I'm going to go about talking through the course. So let's start at the start, since that's the obvious place. The start is in a big field that we rent from the state of Colorado. And I'm going to cover the parking real quick because that's always an important part. But when you come in, you can come from Salida. If you come from Salida, you'll come from this bottom side. If you come from Buena Vista, you'll come from this top side. And you'll notice there's this little U-shaped entrance. You can come from either direction, and then you got to funnel in through this gate, and then we park people in this big portion of the field over here. Then we have our camping areas and whatnot. But the big things I want you to notice is at the top of this field is where we're going to have our Cottonwood shuttle access shuttle passes and parking passes booth. We're also going to have a food truck over here for all you people that like to eat and don't want to get hangry. So that will be in place after the start. But when you come in at the beginning, you're just going to get we have like 5 or 6 people who will help you park. They'll park you in this space, and then you just walk to the north to get over here to the start finish area. And this is where the gear check is before the race and the arch and the finish line and all that jazz. It's a couple hundred yards. If for some reason you have any needs for additional access, if you're in a wheelchair or have any ADA requests, let us know. We can get you in a lot closer. But generally, it's going to be about 100 to 200 yard walk from your car to the start line. So runners are going to go out from this. They're going to do a little out and back. It's actually not an out and back. It's a stem because they don't do this for another 90 miles. But they go all the way out to the first aid station, which is Raspberry. The thing to point out here is you hit Raspberry twice. First at mile 7.3 and then second at mile 93. So it's important to know that you can be there for the second time, but you aren't allowed there during the first time. There's just too many people and not enough parking access, and it's a very pretty field and it gets damaged easily. So you can't be there for Raspberry 1, but you can be there for Raspberry 2. So we'll talk about Raspberry 2 in a second when we get back. So from the start, you don't have anything to do for a while as your runner goes through Raspberry 1. Then they go up a large climb to the high point of the course. This is called the Antero Little Browns section, and they're going to hit the Antero aid station. We're going to come back to this in a minute when we talk about the shuttling to Cottonwood. Then they do this big descent to the highway crossing. It's not really a highway. It's like a gravel road. People drive it like it's a highway though. We have a sheriff here. They help you guys cross the road. And here's another checkpoint. This is the new one this year that we're using to help control the access at Cottonwood. It's called Baldwin Gulch. It's just a comms only station. Then they keep going all the way along the same road that you guys drive, but on the other side of the creek. So it's a lot less dusty for them to be out here. It's a lot safer. But you're essentially paralleling the same route you guys will eventually drive to Hancock. They go through this town of St. Elmo, and then they start the out and back. And they go up and over Laws Pass and into Cottonwood. And Cottonwood is the first place crews are able to access their runners. Now you'll notice that this is Cottonwood, and this is the shuttling spot. And it's about 3.5 miles between the two. And so we basically will have you guys park here, you get driven up, you stay as long as you need to, and then you get driven back. And that is limited to only 2 crew members, and you have to have a special parking pass. And again, we're going to cover this in more detail in a second, so don't worry about it too much. After you see the crew or your runners for the first time, they're going to go back over Laws Pass, back into St. Elmo, and then they're going to turn up and go into Tin Cup. And this is a large climb that they're going to do here on a road, and then they pick up the Continental Divide Trail, and they run through this incredibly high alpine section. It's all above tree line for almost 5 miles. It's a really punishing section, but it's a really gorgeous section. And eventually they drop back down, they join this old railroad grade, and they hit Hancock, which is mile 50 basically. And Hancock is the second place that you crews can access your runners. At this point, you're also allowed to have a pacer. And so this is most often where pretty much every single person who has a pacer is going to start. Now, Hancock's parking is a little bit from the aid station. So again, there's going to be a bit of a walk. It's probably a 5 to 10 minute walk. It's on a road. It's very gentle. The footing's just fine. It's just high elevation, and sometimes the weather can be a little squirrely. We'll cover this a little bit more when we talk about Hancock, because that's the other small change we made this year. But after that, I want to show you how far away you have to drive to get to the next aid station and how actually close it is. So I'm going to switch over here to a Google map, since we all know what that looks like. Okay, so this is Hancock. And right here is Monarch Pass. And that is roughly 20 miles. You have to drive all the way around, all the way to the highway, all the way back down to Salida, and all the way over to the ski resort. It is a roughly 2-hour drive. It is long. It's often in the dark. Most of the places that serve food are closed. It's a very committing section. So don't forget to plan for that. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But as you're doing this massive 2-hour drive all the way around all these mountains, your runner is running on some of the finest single track in the world. They go over a small climb. They drop down here into the Lost Wonder Hut, which is this beautiful backcountry ski hut that we rent just for the race. And then they continue a descent until they start what's called the head wall, which is this last final big climb up to the Continental Divide proper, where they're on the ridge. And the ridge is an incredibly scenic section, but it's also just absolutely challenging. It is so high, it's so far in the race, it's really punishing for runners. But if they can push all the way through it, they're going to reach the Purgatory Aid Station, which is inside the Monarch ski area. They're going to continue through the ski area for about 3.5 miles until they hit Monarch Pass. Monarch Pass is where you guys get to see them again. Now, the nice thing about Monarch, unlike all the other places you've been so far, is Monarch is on a highway. It's well paved. It's got lots of lighting. It's actually one of the easier ones to get to, minus just the large drive from Hancock. So it's a big parking lot off the side of a highway. It is fairly high. It's just below tree line. So sometimes the weather can be kind of unpleasant. However, there is pretty good cell service, especially if you have, what is it, Sprint, T-Mobile, and AT&T. If you're like me and you have Verizon, welcome to the dark ages. You'll be used to it at this point because there's not a lot of cell service everywhere else. But nonetheless, there is sometimes Wi-Fi. Don't plan on it though. But we will have some iPads available for you guys that are connected to a Starlink that you can check your runners' times on, and that is part of our what's called a crew station, which is basically an aid station just for you guys that our friends Ultra put on. It's a bunch of shelters they put together. They've got food, warming stations, chairs, the iPads for you to check your runners on. It's a really nice way for you guys to just take a little bit of a break, check in, and reset while you wait for your runners to show up. Now, the cutoff at Monarch is 9 a.m., and the course record at Monarch is 12 hours earlier. So Monarch is, for many people, going to be in the dead of night. And for the back of the pack, you'll probably be there during sunrise and a little bit later. So depending on what pace your runner is going to be running, this can be a decent place for a nap sometimes. It can also be a beautiful place for a nice morning breakfast. But there aren't any resources up there besides a porta potty. There is a gift shop, but it's not open by the time you guys are there. So you still need to plan as if you're fully self-sufficient. After Monarch, your runner is more or less done with the heavy lifting, but they have a lot of miles still to cover. They do one last tiny little climb above tree line, and then they drop a beautiful, easy descent all the way down into Fooses. They cross the highway again. And it's important to note that you are not allowed to stop cheer and cheer them on. That is not something that's in our permit, so don't be tempted to do that. Once they cross the highway, they do some climbing. It's called the Hill of Broken Dreams because everybody thinks the climbing's over, and they hit this and they realize there's so much more climbing left. It's just lower. So they keep climbing up this. They get over into the Angel of Chavano area, or the Chavano aid station. This is another place that you are not allowed to access, even though it's relatively close to the roads. The reason for that is there is no parking. So please don't drive to either of those two locations. The good news is you get to see them at Blanks, which is just a few miles further. Now, a word of caution with Blanks. The road to Blanks is dark and full of terrors, and especially when you haven't slept. The reality is it's a fairly benign drive if you're in a four-wheel drive vehicle. If you're in an all-wheel drive vehicle, it takes a little bit more attention. If you're in a low clearance minivan or Prius, it's going to be a very stressful drive. It's very, very slow. And it's a long ways. If you look, this is where you leave the highway, and then you spend almost 10, 12 miles driving to the aid station. Throughout most of this drive, you will actually have cell service, which is nice. It's spotty, it's usually a bar or two, but it's enough to get out a text message or check tracking, get an email, that kind of thing. So you won't be totally out there, but you just have to persevere driving all the way to the aid station. When you're almost to the aid station, you're gonna hit a big trailhead. This is the trailhead for a very popular 14er in the area called Mount Chavano, which is why these are all named, you know, the Chavano Trailhead and so forth. This is not the aid station, but it does have a restroom. So if you need to use the restroom, this is the place to stop. But what you need to do is keep driving down this little stretch of road into this large field where you'll be parked by some parking attendants. And this is where your runner comes in on this red line. They come into the aid station and off they go. Blanks is a really lovely place. However, it has cows, and cows bring flies, and these flies bite like they hate us. So I highly recommend some bug spray. Don't be one of those people who's sitting there tired, sore, and cranky waiting for your runner who's 4 hours behind their splits and you start losing your mind over some flies. It's an existential crisis that you can have later and probably after some sleep. Persevere through that, and then you get to leave. You go all the way back out the same exact road you just drove in on. You're going to hit the highway, and then you're going to drive basically back up the highway. Your runner follows the Colorado Trail all the way back to our friend Raspberry 2. This is the second time they hit this aid station. And this is where you can then access them. The drive to Raspberry is relatively straightforward compared to everything you've just done. You come off the highway and you basically just drive straight. The last little section right here at the end is a little chunky, but it's probably 1.5 miles to the aid station, if that. So, you know, I wouldn't stress it. You can move pretty quickly through all of this. The parking for this is within a couple hundred yards, so it's a relatively easy walk to the aid station. Raspberry is super spread out, so there's not a lot of traffic by the time you get there. So there shouldn't be a ton of cars. This is 7 miles for the runners, 7.3 specifically, to get to the finish line. And it's about a 20-minute drive for you to get from here to the finish line. There is one option for people who want to have multiple pacers at the very end when they get back off the single track and they pick up the road for the final 3 3/4 miles. And that is this spot right here. There are coordinates listed online. This is where you can pick up as many pacers as you want. The only restriction is they have to be legitimate pacers. They have to have their gear. They have to have a pacer bib. They have to sign their waiver. The easiest place for you to do that is at Raspberry before you leave. So it's a great place just to get that teed up if you want this. I don't have driving directions to this because frankly, it's relatively easy just to plug this into Google Maps. It's also something I just don't want to confuse people thinking they have to go there. This is purely optional. If you are not going to this spot, as a crew, you have a little bit of a shortcut you can take on some county roads that bring you back basically to the start. And you get to sit there and wait until your runner arrives. And you can park as many vehicles at the start line as you want. You can leave them there during the race. You can come back to the start line as much as you want. It is a resource for you to use. So don't be shy. At the finish line, we do have a food truck this year. So that will hopefully help people get something to eat at the end of the race. We'll post a menu. I think we have it. I just think they're making a tweak for just to give us some more dietary options. So we'll have that up soon. We also have free beverages, alcoholic and otherwise, for folks. Those are from our sponsors, Laws and Elevation Beer. So we highly encourage you to just come to the finish line, kick off your shoes, lounge and relax, and take in the fact that you helped get your runner 100 miles in some pretty tough terrain. So that is the course. Do we have any questions about the course specifically before we dive into the specifics of Cottonwood Aid Station? If you do, go ahead and come off mute or drop it in the chat. I want to keep us moving, so don't be shy. Man, there's like 100 people on this call. That's fantastic.
Hey, Caleb.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, what's different about the course from last year towards Purgatory?
So you're going to love this. I just spent most of my entire day at Monarch trying to figure out Purgatory.
Nice.
There's 3 course changes this year, and they're very simple. The first is that Hancock is now over here. This is where it's supposed to have been for 3 years now, and for 3 years, the Colorado Trail Foundation reserved it in front of us and used it to build the trail. Now we have it. They're done building. So it used to be right here. Now it's right here. That's one change. The next change is down here by Lost Wonder. We don't do this little out and back. So there was a little single track loop basically that you did. We cut that out. That brings the mileage literally at 100 miles, which I'm very proud of, instead of 101. And then this map is now wrong as of today, which is great because I just emailed the runners this morning being like, download the maps. They're finally fixed. This is not it. So Monarch is getting permission to expand their mountain all on this side over here. They haven't done it yet, but it's going to start 2 days before the race. And they're going to be putting a bunch of equipment where we normally are. So now we are moving basically right here. So it's on the same line, but it is a mile further away from where it used to be. But here's the beauty. We cut a mile and then we moved it a mile. So essentially it's the same as every year. It's just physically moved further south, closer to Monarch. So it will run very similarly. The downside is you only have, like, it's not really a downside. It's mostly just kind of weird to have an aid station so close to another aid station because they're only like 2 miles and some change apart. But that's really it for the changes.
Cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hillary asks, are there certain places where it's okay or not okay for the crew to sleep in a tent during the race? I would say there's very few places where a tent is going to fly, mostly because there just isn't access for us to put up a tent. So like, don't put up a tent in a parking lot. At Cottonwood, it's in the middle of the day, so you won't need to. Blanks, Raspberry, Yeah, I'd say those you could put up a tent and definitely camp. Um, an easy way to get some Z's is just sleep in your car. Throw some seats down if you got enough room. Um, if not, you can also just sleep along basically where you're going to crew your runner. I've done that before, so that they have to trip over you, and if you aren't awake when they come through. But I wouldn't say you could. I wouldn't expect to be able to use a tent at most until the last two. Any other questions? Going once, going twice, thrice. Okay, let's talk about Cottonwood. All right, this is a brand new piece of the website. So if you see typos in here, I humbly ask you not to judge me too harshly. But if you see them, please email me. I hate typos. So this is your resource as a crew, and it's broken out. It's almost identical to the manual, which is just in PDF form. The main reason we have both of these is so that when you don't have cell service, you have an easily printable version that you've either saved on your phone or printed off on paper so that you have it accessible, right? Because you probably can't load some of these pages, for example, at Cottonwood, you wouldn't be able to have any cell service. So it's a bit redundant. You don't have to read, both and highlight each individual section, but definitely plan on having the PDF with you during the race, either printed or saved on your phone. For the purposes of just navigability and ease of viewing this, I'm going to work through the website version of this. But again, it's basically the same as what's in the PDF. So straight up, we're letting you know that there's some big changes to Cottonwood. And this is important because Cottonwood is such a difficult aid station for us to get you guys to. And we've had to make some pretty significant changes so that we can keep it. If this year doesn't work, we're going to have to cut through access to Cottonwood entirely. And that means no one can see anybody until they get to Hancock. So it's really important that we nailed this process and how to design it, that you guys help us nail it by following the details, that weather cooperates and everything goes nicely. So I appreciate you all being here and paying close attention to this. There's some basic stuff in here that we're going to cover in a few different places. So I'm not going to read this verbatim, but I do want you guys to make sure that you're reviewing these general crew rules. And the key ones, besides the changes that we're about to cover, is that you are not, under any situation conceivable to mankind, able to go to a non-crew accessible aid station at all. You can't just go there to cheer them on. You can't find them on the course and cheer them on. The Forest Service here is incredibly particular on protecting the resource that we have. And frankly, the people that do the most damage to the landscape are crews. Runners stay on the trail, they move quickly, they move lightly, and crews post up in a spot for hours, sometimes with dozens of people. So it might seem like it's a bit excessive, maybe, but this is truly important to us to make sure that you're only going to the places where we say you can go, and you're not accessing your runner outside of those spots. Fortunately, I have not yet had to disqualify any runner for their crew doing that. We've had plenty of times where people have shown up and we've caught them early enough, we can turn them around. But please note that if there is any aid given outside of an aid station, that is going to end up being a disqualification. So it's very important that the runners educate you, the crew. If you're the crew here and the runner is not, even better. You heard it from the horse's mouth, me being the horse. The other big thing is that as we all get later into the race, we all get a little less sleep, we all get a little less food, and we all get a little bit crankier. Please do not be mean to a volunteer. If they're giving you information that you don't want to hear, that's not their fault. That's me telling them what to tell you. And they are there out of the goodness of their heart, supporting people that have no idea who they are, and to be rude to them is not okay. So no matter how frustrated you might be or how imperfect maybe their approach to a situation is, please treat them with some grace and some courtesy so that they want to come back next year, because we can't do this without them. All right, so let's talk about parking at Hancock and Cottonwood. You get 2 parking passes, and they're different colors so that we can make sure we keep this straight. When your runner gets their bag on Thursday with their bib and all their swag, they get a parking pass, and the parking pass is called a Hancock Plus parking pass. That means you can go to Hancock plus anything afterwards, right? That means you can go Hancock, Monarch, Blanks, Raspberry 2 with that single pass. But you have to have that pass in the vehicle parking at all those aid stations, because you can only have one vehicle to begin with, so you can't have multiples. And you can change that pass between vehicles. So it's easy if you've got somebody doing one aid station and someone's doing another, you can just hand the pass off they go, totally fine. Cottonwood is the particular one. Cottonwood requires you to come to the start. I call it the start finish, either one interchangeably. You have to come to the start finish, and you have to get a specific pass just for Cottonwood. And that comes with up to 2 tickets for the shuttle. The shuttles are literally just Jeeps and pickup trucks that a local 4-wheel drive group organizes and drives up this rocky 4-wheel drive road for you guys to do. So they're not buses or anything fancy. They're literally just dudes with trucks. Actually, dudes and ladies with trucks. There's some pretty significant, you'd be surprised, it's pretty cool. The parking pass is straightforward, but the metering is where this gets a little particular. So in order for you to leave for Cottonwood, your runner has to pass one of 2 locations. And these 2 locations are positioned on the course to allow you guys and us at the shuttles plenty of time to get you to the aid station ahead of your runner. So that's why there's 2. I tried to make it 1. I tried so hard to make it 1. But in order to get the spread just right, we had to split it into 2. So if you want to follow along with me on the website, you're going to go to the Cottonwood Crewing tab, which says shuttled and metered in multiple places. The 2 places that your runner can pass in order for you to get released is either the Antero aid station before 10 a.m. That roughly equates to the first 30 to 50 people. So if your runner is running about a 27-hour or faster High Lonesome, they're probably going to get through Antero by 10 a.m. Everybody else needs to get down that heinous 4-wheel drive road called the Baldwin Gulch Road and hit the bottom of that, which is where our new aid station, not aid station, our new checkpoint, the Baldwin Gulch checkpoint is. And that is literally just there because that distance from that aid station to Cottonwood is pretty much the perfect amount of time for you guys to get from the start to Cottonwood in front of them. So as soon as your runner has passed Baldwin Gulch, off you can go. This is going to roughly equate to about 40 people leaving Antero, or sorry, that can leave through Antero. And then it's about 60 people an hour leaving through Baldwin Gulch. So it's a rush. There's going to be a lot of traffic at the parking passes, and we've got a good chunk of volunteers there. We're going to try to make it really smooth, really fast, so you don't have to worry about it. But we did bake in room for error. Okay, so the 2 error points that can happen is there's some sort of delay with the communications, or there's a line to get your parking pass, or your cell phone decides that moment to die. That's one side. And the other side is a wait at the shuttles. And you probably will have to wait at the shuttles for 10 to 30 minutes. It takes about 30 minutes round trip for the shuttles to do it. They can haul 4 people a piece, which is basically 2 crews. So you got to be a little patient. In general, I want you to focus on this stuff right here. These are the rough time windows that you have from your runner leaving that checkpoint to when they get to the aid station. So you can see the fast runners, 2.5 hours, which is more than enough time. And then the middle of the pack runners, you have 3.25 hours before they get to Cottonwood from the Baldwin checkpoint. And then for the back of the packers, it's anywhere from 3.75 to 5 hours for them to get there. So you are still probably going to arrive well before your runner gets there. But this lets us spread out the crews so that we get vehicles leaving at the same time we have vehicles coming in. Instead of everybody showing up early and parking up 200 parking spots, now we can kind of rotate through about 140 parking spots, which is really all we have room for. And if you think I'm being paranoid, the Forest Service is going to be here for about 3 hours watching us park you guys. So we got to nail this one. Let's say your runner has passed their checkpoint and you're ready to roll. You're going to go to the start line. You're going to go to the booth. We're going to give you your parking pass. We're hopefully going to have time to write the early anticipated arrival time based on all of our historical splits and the average time. The early, well, we crunched the numbers last year, and basically, I think only 2 people were ahead of their earliest projection, and it was by less than a minute. So it's a really good like early bracket, but most people were within 5 minutes of their expected average time. If we have the time at the booth, we're going to write these down there. And the only purpose for that is just to try to give you guys a little added peace of mind so that when you're waiting for the shuttle, you can look at this and be like, got an hour and a half still. We're good. If we start getting backed up, we're not going to take the time to write these things down. We're just going to punch people through because the best way for you not to miss your runner is to get to your runner. So we're not going to slow that process down. Once you get your parking pass, you can also buy up to 2 shuttle tickets. You don't have to buy both. You can buy 1 or 2. They're $10 a piece. It is a fundraiser for the group that's a nonprofit that does the shuttle. They use most of this money to basically pay for the trail placards and the signage up on trailheads to educate people on how not to drive off-road, like literally off the roads and damage all the terrain. So it's a good cause. We'll take cash and card, so you'll have plenty of time, not plenty of time, multiple ways to pay for us. I really wanted to try to pre-buy these things, but it just isn't going to work. So you are going to have to buy these in person. Okay. You drive to the parking spot, you show your parking pass to the person, they park you in, you take your tickets and any gear you want, and you walk to the shuttles, you hand them your tickets, off you go. You get to the aid station, first thing you should do, grab your runner's drop bags, get set up, get it all teed up. When you're done, you go back to where the shuttles dropped you off, you hop in the shuttles, they drive you down, you get in your car, off you go. It's really straightforward. So once you actually get your pass, you're going to be golden. It's going to feel just like any other crew access experience you've had. So, any questions on Cottonwood specifically? We have one in the chat, so let's start there. From the start to Baldwin Gulch, I don't see that on the table. It doesn't matter the distance because it's just a crew release point. It's roughly 4 miles down the road. Other questions, though? Yes, ma'am. Carrie.
Yeah, sorry. I have 2 small children that are coming with me. So because I can only buy 2 tickets, I can't go to Cottonwood. Is that basically what I'm looking at here?
Are you fully solo?
Yes, I'm fully solo. Like, we have no friends, we have nothing. It's just me and the kids, and that's it.
Are you Mrs. Grant Mueller?
I am Mrs. Grant Mueller.
Okay, you can tell Grant I'm sorry for not responding to his email for a week, but we can figure something out for that scenario.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Carrie. Other questions? This is the downside of being too busy. You read the emails and you're like, I have to craft a good response to this, and then you just get overwhelmed. I need an AI assistant. Yes.
I have a quick question. So when we go to pick up the parking pass, is that assuming we've checked that our runner has passed that point, or will the people at the table also be checking that and confirming it?
Great question. Both. I highly recommend that we'll basically know if we can let you go or not, presuming your runner's passed, right? But we can't just give your parking pass to a ghost. So you have to physically come there. If you show up early and your runner hasn't cleared the checkpoint, we're just going to tell you, hey, it's not ready yet.
A little bit.
However,
I'm on a car.
There we go. However, if you are as tuned in as we are, that's the perfect scenario, right? You can sign up for text alerts. that will shoot you a text the minute your runner hits or exits an aid station. That's the best case scenario. So you get that. But in order to get that, obviously you have to be in cell service, which is why we have a food truck at the start line that's serving coffee and breakfast. We kind of assume that you will want to be hanging out there so that your minimal amount of wait time to turn around and get to Cottonwood. But we aren't going to be like texting you, hey, your runner is left. The only texting will be coming from the automated tracking system. Katie asks, what if your runner is late? Can you still stay until they come through? Katie, I'm not sure I fully understand that question. I think what you're saying is if you get to Cottonwood and your runner is late, there is no timetable for you to leave Cottonwood. Once you're there, you can stay as long as you want. The shuttles stop running at 6 o'clock. That's the cutoff at Cottonwood. Anybody who's left after that, the volunteers will basically shuttle up and down to get folks out. So yeah, you can be there. Marianne asked, can there be a driver along with the 2 crew? The driver would stay in the car. Absolutely. You can hang out at the parking spot. There's restrooms there. It's very gorgeous. It's very close to a lake, Cottonwood Lake. It's a great place to play around. So you can definitely hang out there. Rain or Shine asked, my husband will have my kids and would like to take them to Cottonwood, but are there age and height requirements for the shuttle? I know those roads can be rough. There is no age requirement, but you are expected to adhere to any federal or state rules about booster seats and child seats. So make sure you have those if you need them. As a reminder, in Carrie's situation where she's the only adult and has multiple children, we'll make exceptions. But if you have multiple adults, you can still only have 2 bodies, whether it's an adult or a kid. So you do have to be tactful, or not tactful, but intelligent about who you're sending up. Joe asked, can a third person bicycle up? Absolutely not. There is no foot traffic at all on that road at any point during the race, by the race. So you get 2 bodies up there and that is it. There's a big sign that'll say that. It's a good question, but it's a very nasty road. We don't want the shuttles having to dodge people trying to ride a bike or hike up multiple miles. Good questions, though. Very good. I appreciate you all putting some good thought into this. What else do we have? Okay. Going once. Going twice. Thrice. Okay. Excellent. Let's hope Cottonwood truly goes as smoothly as that just went. After Cottonwood, your next spot is Hancock. And Hancock is a lot simpler. I have one caveat that I ask of you. There is no metering. You have to have your parking pass, as we discussed. This is the one your runner gets at check-in. You're going to show up and park. I request that you wait until your runner has left St. Elmo too, right? They have to get back over the big climb and back to St. Elmo before you drive. Like Cottonwood, I've broken out the average times that you have as a crew to get to the aid station if your runner leaves St. Elmo 2 in some bucket of time. So remember, Hancock is mile 49.3. It's where you can pick up a pacer. It's the big aid station. The course record from St. Elmo 2 to Hancock is 2.25 hours. The average drive time to there is roughly 60 minutes. So if you left on the dot and there was nobody in front of you driving slowly, there was nothing untoward about your drive, you would end up being there an hour and a quarter before your runner would, which is so much time. Now, people drive very slowly, so you want to bake in some time. So I think if I was in this position, I'd leave the minute my runner was out of St. Elmo 2. For fast runners, which is I generally define as sub 27 hours, you have 2.5 hours to get there. Mid-pack runners is 3.5, and back of the pack is 4 hours or even longer. So you don't have to leave the minute your runner leaves St. Elmo 2. If you have a specific plan and your runner says, I want you to get here roughly around this time, that's fine. Do that. But if you're sitting here being like, I want to drive straight from Cottonwood straight to Hancock, that's really challenging for us because the parking gets congested. And that is why we will probably have to meter this next year like we're doing at Cottonwood. But in the effort of not doing too much too soon, we're kind of leaving Cottonwood as an we're leaving Hancock as an honor system to just try to show up in a relatively reasonable time window of your runner. It is 60 minutes from the start line to get to Hancock. The road to Hancock, in fact, I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys this on, I'll show you this on Cal Topo. I think seeing it on a map will help a little bit here. I'm going to do this for Cottonwood too, but I'm just going to do Hancock since I'm already talking about it. All right. So here's our start line right up here. Here was Cottonwood. This is where you were earlier. And now you're going down to here. This road, all the way along this canyon, half of it's paved. It switches from pavement about right here. Then it turns to a gravel road. It's still an official county road, so it gets pretty good maintenance. It's dusty, but 35 miles an hour is the speed limit, and there's no reason you can't drive that comfortably. Right here, right before you hit the ghost town of St. Elmo, which is not open to the race, you do this little left turn. That's very easy to miss. And in the written instructions, I have and on the end of this page, you can see some signs that basically you want to make sure you catch. Once you get on this road here, I'm going to switch to Forest Service. Once you pick up this road here, which is, you literally do not turn off this road all the way to Hancock. This is the old railroad grade that was built back in like 1870 something. So it is like 3% incline for miles, but it is full of potholes. And in my pickup truck, and I'm used to driving roads, I mean, it is very easy for me to drive this in less than 60 minutes. I can get from the start to there in 40 minutes. If you're in like a Subaru, 60 minutes is a pretty reasonable time. If you are in a Prius, this is going to be excruciating. I know we all want to use vehicles we own or use vehicles that are very, environmentally friendly, but this is a difficult race without good clearance and good suspension. So if you rented a car, hopefully you've taken the advice we gave the runners and rented a good clearance vehicle. There are a lot of pull-offs on this road. If you are driving on this road and there is a car behind you, pull over, let them pass you. I got caught behind 24 cars last year trying to get to Hancock with some gear that we needed there. And it took way longer than we needed to because someone was in a minivan and was driving very slowly and passed 15 different turnouts that they could have turned out and let people go ahead. So the general rule of thumb is if there's one person behind you, you might not be the problem. They could be tailgating you. But if there's two people behind you, you're the slow person and you should pull over at your earliest available moment. Within reason, right? Like, don't climb up half of a hillside to get out of the way so like one car can pass you. But there are literally multiple turnoffs that are built for this reason that you will see and can use. I would say you're relatively close to the aid station once you park. Going back to satellite, and you're basically just parking on this side of the road. This is the west side of the road. It's the side you drive in on. And you just pull over as far as you can. We have a parking attendant that's going to be checking your passes and parking you in. When you're ready to leave, you just drive. If you can turn around right where you are, fantastic. If you need more space, we have a designated turnaround here for emergency vehicles that you drive up, turn around, and leave. To get to the aid station, you just walk up this road to this trailhead, and then there's this very little brief section you have to walk to get into the aid station proper. You can actually see the aid station very, very well across from the parking area. So it shouldn't be confusing. You actually will probably be like, wait, I have to walk all the way around this creek. And that's just because the only bridge over the creek is right here. So fairly straightforward. At Cottonwood, just to demonstrate this, it's a large field and you're gonna pull in up here. There's banners and parking attendants and flags and all that stuff. You cannot miss it. And they're going to park you in. You can see that this is a very convoluted field, right? It's not like it's a perfect rectangle. We got lots of spots. They're going to be parking folks and squeezing every ounce of space we can out of this. So once you pull in here, look for the parking attendants and follow them in. Biggest thing you can do is just park as close as you can to the people that you're next to. And then if you want to like picnic and hang out, there's all of this space over here that we don't use for parking. That's saved for just the general public. Great place to hang out, picnic, play with the kids, that kind of stuff. Okay. All right, lots of questions about timing. Timing is 60 minutes from the start line to Hancock. Okay, there's no reason to drive straight from Cottonwood to Hancock because you need to wait for your runner to leave. The driving directions reflect that because it takes you right past the start-finish line. Stephanie asked if runners can access their crew vehicles. No, you can't. It is considered a competitive advantage to access a vehicle because if you are a runner without a crew, you don't have access to that. So they have to bring everything they want to the aid station. But the good news is the reason we love Hancock in the spot is there's so much more room for you guys to spread out and set up like really awesome crew stations to help your runners. And then most importantly, this is the restroom right here. You got to walk. Everybody walks past the bathroom. You're gonna think this is stupid. I'm telling you this, but you're gonna want this. All right. Questions about Hancock before we move on? Don't be shy. Patrick.
Can you hear me?
No, I think you might have been muted.
How about now?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Yeah. This is kind of a general question. So when we get to the area to crew, should we bring like an easy up, or are we just going to have our chairs? What's it look like?
Good question. I would encourage you not to bring an easy up. There's just not a lot of space. Also, you can't fit an easy up in a shuttle, so it doesn't work.
Okay.
We have a pretty good footprint at these crew accessible aid stations to try to give you guys space if there's bad weather. Now, luckily, a lot of the times in the past, we've had pretty solid weather, and so shade isn't super critical at these spots, and it's relatively easy. If there's rain and you bring an easy up, you're going to be a crowd favorite for sure. So there's a little bit of an option there, but I would generally say, plan on whatever you want to carry being carried 10 minutes. And do you want to hoof it that far? I like to use like North Face duffel bags or the Patagonia or Osprey duffel bags. In fact, Osprey actually makes one that's really nice. It's like really square and it can fit gear really nicely. Bring some chairs. A blanket can be really nice. So something to, sit on, especially if the ground's kind of wet. But I think the biggest thing you can do is bring something so you are comfortable for hours of waiting, because you're going to be sitting there for hours at a time waiting for your runner to come. And so, bring a book, bring a headlamp, bring some sleeping bags, bring some food, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's definitely a bit of a acquired preference on how exactly you want to do it. Let's see. Ginny asked.
Thank you.
Yeah,
great.
Absolutely. Good question, Patrick. Ginny asked, yes, this will be recorded. It will be posted to YouTube, same as our pre-race runner planning night. So it will be linked on there. More questions about Hancock before we move on and briefly cover Monarch, Blanks, and Raspberry. All right, keep her moving.
Wait, can I ask a quick question? Not about Hancock, but also not about any of the other stuff you said.
Okay, hit me.
And it's also a runner question, not a crew question. Hunt Lake, that's a thing, right? I didn't make that up.
It's above Boss Lake, yes.
Yeah, there we go. Do you know the details with the water situation there? When I ran it a few weeks ago, it said that the water was poisoned and not to drink it. So like how far down are you not supposed to filter water for that?
Oh man, this is a great question and it allows me to nerd out for a minute. So I'm an avid fly fisherman. Hunt Lake was poisoned with a natural organic poison used to remove aquatic species of invertebrates, so fish, basically, because they are putting in a unique population of cutthroat trout that are unique to the Arkansas Basin that were rescued about 12 hours before the Hayden fire burned the creek to a living crisp. And they've been in a fish hatchery for about 6 years now. And so they've been looking for places to put these fish in historic watersheds where they would have been found. And so Hunt Lake is a really good candidate because it can't be passed from lower fish, can't get up these, they call them fish ladders, basically. They can't get past these points to get up into the lake. So they poisoned it in September. To my knowledge, it is more than, I mean, they're going to put the fish in there in a few weeks. So if the fish can live there, I'm pretty sure we can drink there. But if you prefer, and as I would prefer you not to risk this, all you have to do is just go upstream because there's literally nothing that up there besides just willows. So if you start, once you go past the lake, you go through this little field, kind of this little talus thing up above there. All that watershed was never touched by, it's called rotenone. It's the poison that they use for it. So, but yeah, good question. Love cutthroats. All right, I'm getting a lot of questions that don't involve Hancock, but I'm going to answer them just because I think this is a good sign. Meg mentioned she got some water above there last weekend, just above tree line. It's a great space. There are some like tarns or like non-moving water lakes. They're just like puddles, basically. I don't think I would personally filter from those just because they don't ever get like water being exchanged. I'm sure people do, but I personally wouldn't. So I like to use moving water. Brianna asked, or Brianna, sorry if I mispronounced it, asked, is there any place you should be wary of filtering from? I don't think so. There are a lot of mine tailings in the area. So there are some, you know, probably some heavier metals in the water. But in general, I mean, I filtered from every single stream you cross as a runner, and I've had zero issues for the last 20 years. So I wouldn't worry about it. Higher to me is always safer. Just, you know, it's probably more likely fresh snow that's melted and it's been exchanged much faster. I stay away from lakes just because lake water tastes bad. It's got that little bit of like a stale water taste. Even like 40 feet below an outlet of a lake tastes better because the water is like more oxygenated, I think. So I would filter from anywhere. Moving water is going to be nice and cold. So that's another benefit, especially if you're in the daytime. If you see anything in the water, like one time I was running and I saw a dead elk after I filtered and drank the water from just below it, still alive. However, it wasn't a great experience. So just look around you before you filter. But good questions. Highly recommend carrying a filter as a runner or a pacer. And if you're a crew, bring your water with you too, because sometimes it's hard to get water on the drives around you. So good water jug is helpful. But okay, questions about Hancock before we move on? Going once, twice, thrice. Okay. The next tab on the website or in the PDF is Monarch Blanks and Raspberry. This is really straightforward. You guys are going to love this. All you have to do is have the parking pass and you follow the directions. That's it. That simple. These directions are in the PDF form. They're also visually on the Avenza map. So these blue lines will allow you to navigate offline if you don't have internet access. So highly recommend having those. Yeah, these are, I think you guys will love how simple these are compared to Cottonwood's kind of kerfuffle to get there. But anybody have any questions from what they've looked at already on these three locations? Excellent. Okay, now let's get into some minutia. Everything we've been talking about is predicated on the presumption that we can somehow predict what happens in a 100-miler. And as anybody can tell you, 100-milers are just chaos. Like you could do the best planning and it's not going to work out. So luckily we have two tools that work pretty well to help you get at least a ballpark picture of what you can expect from a runner. Now, the runners already know this, and they've hopefully already shared it with you. But this is our tracking platform that we use. It's called Open Split Time. During the race, you will see a, yeah, I'll do this. You can see this is basically what the main tracking sheet's going to look like. If it loads, there it is. And it basically just has people, you know, from fastest to slowest, and it just shows you when they come in and when they come out of each aid station. And we do track in and out. So you can get a good sense on your runner. It's not uncommon for you to get a text that your runner's in an aid station and then nothing happens for like 20 minutes. You're like, what's going on? And then you see him check out, and it can be a good indicator for you to be like, oh, okay, you know, maybe my runner's hurting a little bit. They spent kind of a long time at this aid station. But this is what this looks like during the race. But for you guys to predict somewhat what your runner can do, you use this Plan My Effort tool right here. And this is literally just taking every single year of the race, and you put in a time, let's say 30 hours, and it says, okay, based on everybody else who did roughly 30 hours, what was their pace, and how does it predict? And here you go. It spits out each aid station. It shows you the elapsed time from the start to that aid station, both in and out. And it shows you the segment time, and it shows you on average how long people are spending in aid stations. And this is what I think is really useful as a crew. Time in aid stations, if it's well spent, is a huge investment that's worth doing. But it is really easy to get trapped into an aid station, right? Your runner is just like, oh, it hurts, and you want to help them not hurt. And then all of a sudden 30 minutes have gone by and nothing's really changed. So you need to be efficient. And this is a good gut check to look at this and say, okay, I'm going to Hancock at the 30-hour mark, which means I'm going to be there before dark. So it's 7:15, 7:30. And I, on average, would probably spend 15 minutes here if I was a runner. So let's try to do 10, something like that. Because at the end of this pace, look how long that person is, this average person, spent in an aid station, almost 2 hours in an aid station. If you're chasing cutoffs, this is the difference between finishing and not finishing. So your job as crews is to, as best as you can, get your runner what they need as fast as they can. Try to intuit it, because no one's great articulating when they're super tired, and then get them out. Right? So the least time in the aid station, the better. But you got to do your basic stuff, right? If you're caring for blisters, you got to take the time to fix the blisters. Rushing to get out isn't going to help you later. So it's a balancing act, and that can be kind of challenging if you're a new crew. So highly recommend using this as a ballpark. There's another app called Ultra Pacer, which is effectively the same thing. It uses the same data. It just has a slightly different algorithm for predicting timing. I used Ultra Pacer at Western States last year, and I felt like it worked pretty well. That's all I can say. I think either way, these are not going to be perfect, but they're good for you to get an idea. Katie had a question. She asked, will Baldwin? Yes. There will be a whole new line for Baldwin. It'll appear right here between Antero and St. Elmo. It'll say Baldwin comms only, so that it's specific for that spot. We're actually adding a redundant aid station above. It's not an aid station. It's another comms checkpoint above Antero at the high point of the race, just as a triple failsafe in case Antero and Cottonwood both break. We've got something up top that's on a different satellite network, so you'll see those in there. But yeah, good question, Katie. Another question. Lynn, just to clarify, as a runner, we cannot receive aid from a car, even if it's parked. Okay, you are not allowed to get into a vehicle, but if your car is parked there and you're sitting next to it, that's fine. That's not any different than anything else. So at Monarch, yes, you could have the tailgate of a car open and have stuff spread out, and that's totally fine. But if you get into a vehicle, that is, an unfair advantage to you. But fair question. Okay, so using this as a rough plan with you and your runner trying to figure out I like to do slow, medium, fast. So figure out what your runner is like on the best possible day I can run. I can run this time, print that one out. Then do, okay, if everything just probably goes average, print that out. And then print the everything went to hell one. Because you're gonna know probably 30 miles in, one of those is out. And then by 50 miles, you're probably gonna figure out which one is gonna get you all the way in. So it's not uncommon for people to be pretty aggressive with what they think they can do at High Lonesome and then end up coming in 3 to 6 hours later. The folks that seem to do really well are obviously folks with a lot of experience, but also folks that just go in really humble. You know, so a runner who's just like, I know I'm going to be at the back of the pack. I know I'm going to be chasing cutoffs. Those people can do really, really well. It's the people that are like, I'm going to run 24 hours. And then all of a sudden they spend 4 hours at Hancock and they're like, what is going on in my world? That can be a struggle. So it's good to have all 3 brackets in there just to have a fallback. And that way in the field, again, because you don't have cell service for half this race, you can be like, all right, scrap this one, run to this plan. Super helpful. All right. Any questions on that before I move on? All right. Let's talk about a few things that always come up. So, dogs. As my dog walks around, dogs at aid stations are allowed as long as they stay 100 feet outside of an aid station. That 100 feet is not something that's like roped off, but it is 100 feet from any food, any like water station, any cook site, anything like that. I love dogs. I have 3 of them. I've had so many crews show up with dogs and cause dog fights and trip runners even. Like, it is so not okay to bring a dog to a race and let it interfere with the race. So if you have a dog, it's a great time to have that dog stay at a friend's house. If you have to bring your dog, you probably aren't going to be able to go to Cottonwood because there are no dogs at Cottonwood. There's no dogs in the shuttles and no dogs at the 8. So you got to have somebody to watch the dog. If that's okay and you end up going to the next aid station in Hancock, you can bring your dog. It is so hot the second day that leaving a dog in a car is not going to work. Okay, it is going to be 85, maybe even 90 degrees on the Colorado Trail on an average day in July. Inside a car, your car is going to hit 100 plus, right? That is so not safe for a dog. If you bring the dog outside and you have shade, sure, but it's still just like, it's challenging. Plenty of people do it, and it's not like it can't be done, but it's highly recommended that if you have a way to put your dog into doggy daycare, that's a great option. Regardless, if you do bring a dog, leashes the whole time, no exceptions. Also, please clean up all your dog poop. We're having a big issue out here with water quality and dog poop, and some of our like really popular area Forest Service is like, they're not pointing at us because obviously we're not the only ones that have dogs, but it is something they're cognizant about. If they see like an aid station stream nearby go like really high particulates of like dog poop, then they might be like, hey, we don't really want you guys there. So just clean up your dog poop. I'm going to talk about pacers later. One last thing on crews, and then we'll go done or be done. So let me switch tabs. I'm going to go back to the main crew page. And by the way, the dog stuff is highlighted here. So if you need to see that, that's where that is. Now, how to sign up for text alerts for your runners. So this process is really straightforward, but it won't work until we upload the final roster. And so that typically happens Monday before the race, so a week from now. We will upload everybody who's currently registered. We always have a few last minute drops and a few last minute ads, so we wait until Monday to do this. On Monday, you'll be able to go into that main tracking sheet I showed you with all the names and of the runners and the aid stations. And you can click on any of those people's names. And when you click on their names, you'll get this screen here. These are fake names we use. We have a thing called Test Lonesome we use to like model the race. So this is a fake runner named Blake Berg. And up at the top of that page, you can sign up to get notified of his progress. and you can get an email or an SMS. If you're at the race, absolutely do SMS. Data is required for emails. Data is not required for SMS. And about 30% of the course has data, and about 50% has cellular, like SMS ability. So you can get a lot more coverage out of this. So sign up for the text alerts. What that looks like is a runner comes in, you get literally just get a text that says so-and-so has entered this aid station at this time. And then when they check out, boom, send you another check. This person has left the station at this time. This is a great way for your friends who aren't at the race to follow along. It's a great way for you, the crew, to follow along. This has limited functionality to a certain point, because if you're outside of cell service and you've signed up for a text message, you're not going to get that anyways. So, but for the first 2 aid stations, for Cottonwood, that requires the metering and the shuttle, or for Hancock, where we're asking you to wait until St. Elmo 2 has been cleared by your runner, this is your best friend. Sign up for this, because you literally get this within seconds of that person's time getting uploaded, and it's like, boom, you get the text. So it's a great, great tool. I think last year we sent like 10,000 texts out or something obscene. I mean, it's a lot. So it's a really cool tool. Please use it. I always get a bunch of questions. I love these questions, but they come at such an unfortunate time. The week of the race, I get so many Facebook messages from grandparents that are like, I'm trying to follow my grandchild. How do I do that? So if you could please do me a favor and send this page to your grandparents ahead of time, I would be so grateful. So yeah, I put this up. This is the first time I've had this on the website, and I'm really hoping this helps make that process a little bit more clearly. And then last thing, and then we're just going to go to the open Q&A. Last thing I want to cover is just how to be a successful crew. So you have to plan. That is what it comes down to. Everything you think you can wing, you need all that time to fix stuff that you haven't predicted that you'll need to wing. So come in just absolutely locked in and expect that to break and immediately have to fix something else. But you want everything that you can predict locked in, right? You don't want to be hunting for food. You don't want to be looking for gear. You want to plan for the hottest year and the coldest year in the same year. Like, lock in, eliminate your variables, have everything dialed, because stuff is going to break. It's always about how you fix problems in 100, not if they're going to happen. It's what you do when they happen. And so prepare for that. Assume your cell phone won't help in terms of having cell service. So you can do offline Google Maps. You can do the Avenza map. You can have PDF saved to your phone, Google Sheets saved to your phone. Lots of stuff is that. But cell service is really non-existent unless you are on the back third of the race. So basically, like Monarch to the finish, pretty reliable cell service. Cottonwood is dark, Hancock's dark. Your runner won't have any cell service from basically the Raspberry 2 until all the way to Purgatory. So be prepared. I love having a binder with printed stuff. It works. Your phone gets wet, it doesn't die. Paper is king. Like, print a binder. When you're done, recycle it, and you're good to go. It is worth downloading Google Maps and the Avenza map offline before you show up. The Avenza map link is on our course page. So if you go up here and you click course, and then you scroll down, here's all the downloads. And if you go to the Avenza link, it won't show you this because I'm not sharing the screen, but it basically takes you to a link to download it. So highly recommend doing that. Google downloading offlines is something I'm not going to cover. Plenty of YouTube videos about that. You basically just say, download this chunk of the state so it's available offline. And then you can type stuff, search stuff. You can save pins, and those pins show up. It's a good tool. Would recommend pinning those locations in Google or Apple Maps. I'm not an Apple Maps user, but I'm sure it does the same thing. But it's good to have like coordinates saved. That way, if something happens, you've got backups. Be self-sufficient. The towns seem close, but they are closed by 9 o'clock. And most of your race, you're not going to be either close to a town, close to a restaurant, close to a gas station, close to a restroom. Like, you got to be prepared. So bring your own water, bring your own food. It's worth, like, whatever you pack for your runner. Like, if you're packing them food, chairs, layers, gear, all that kind of stuff, you got to pack the same stuff. Pack your own layers, your own gear. How are you going to sleep? How are you going to eat? You got to think about that, because you're useless if you're late. You're useless if you're not, prepared. So lock yourself in too. Sleep is really important. It can be tricky to get. Even the question earlier about can you set up a tent is a good question for that. If you can get a person to swing leads with, it's a really great idea to try to get someone, schedule a time. All right, you're up for, these 2 hours. I'm going to get some sleep, and then we'll switch. If you can get any sleep, get it. It's just worth it. You'll be safer driving. You'll be a better crew. Highly recommend it. If you show up early enough, go drive to the aid stations, like be cognizant of your carbon footprint. But if you're going to go get a shakeout run in, bring your crew along. Have them check out one of the aid station locations you're worried about. Or if there's a specific place that you think your vehicle might not be able to get to, go test drive it. I think it's a pretty good way to figure out quickly if you need to do any last minute changes. Another thing is that this is part of being self-sufficient, but most of our volunteers work one aid station, maybe two, and they've worked them multiple years. So that person is probably really, really experienced at that specific spot, but that person might never have been to another aid station at the race. And if you're asking them, hey, how do I get from Monarch to Blanks? They're like, sorry, man, I've only worked Monarch. I know how to get here. So you need to plan on you knowing where to go and not having a crew member, or sorry, a volunteer be the one directing you. Then lastly, you got to have a higher clearance vehicle. I'm serious about this. In perfect weather, you can get a Prius to every single aid station. I have seen it done. It takes about half an hour of rain for these roads to sometimes turn into really challenging drives. So you need both high clearance and preferably a minimum of all-wheel drive. If you have those two things with patience and a little bit of focus, you're going to be just fine. If you're worried about a specific road and a specific vehicle, and for whatever reason, that is what you're set with, you can reach out to me. I'll do my best to try to give you some beta. But in general, this is a mountain race, and it's challenging access. So someone raised their hand and then took it down. Do you have a question for us, or shall we move on? Okay. All right. That is the extent of the stuff I wanted to talk through. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one last thing I want to show you. If you're splitting aid station drives, like say one crew is going somewhere, one crew is going to a next, and you're not going in this linear progression of like Cottonwood, Hancock, Monarch, like that kind of style. Maybe you're going Cottonwood to Monarch. At the very bottom of the volunteer sheet, there's this table of drive times. And so you can say, all right, I'm driving from Cottonwood and I want to get to Monarch. How long of a drive is that? All right, Cottonwood all the way over to Monarch. Boom, 80 minutes. How long it's going to take me? This is, again, assuming reasonable, like you're obeying traffic laws, you're a competent driver, and you're not hitting traffic. That's what these times are. Decent tool, grain of salt. Google Maps will give you basically the same output that this is giving you, but this is just in a spot for volunteers to kind of see if they're going from like one location to another, what they're looking at time-wise. So, all right, now that is officially all I have. Questions? Don't be shy. If you don't ask me questions, I'm going to assume that I am so good at this and my ego does not need that boost. Yes, Lindsay, thank you.
Hi, Caleb.
Hello.
I just have a question. I know that you said that all of the pacers have to be registered for that last 3 miles.
Mm-hmm.
What about if we just want to run the field? Like, is that okay just to join them at the field, everyone who wants to run?
Yes, great question.
Cool.
Let me show you where that is on the website. It's on the tab we haven't yet covered about pacing. And it's right down here. So pacing the final 3.75 and pacing inside the field. Once you're inside the field, no holds barred, man. Bring the whole crew in, mob the finish line. I love it. Bring your kids. Totally fine. You don't need the gear. It's just when you're on the road from basically where that you can pick up multiple pacers to the gate, that I need people to be carrying the required gear, having the bib, and having the waiver signed. Good question, though. Other questions? Devin.
So I'll be dropping a pacer at Hancock, and I'll be picking my runner up to pace her at Monarch. Is it okay for me to go straight to Monarch and sleep in my car waiting on her?
Yeah, definitely. Totally fine. There's no restrictions on like metering at Monarch. You will have a pretty significant chunk of time from Hancock to Monarch. I mean, that could take some runners, 8 to 10 hours. So it's not the quietest spot. It's on the side of a highway. That's kind of why I'm like hemming and hawing here a bit. If you're a sound sleeper, great spot just to post up. But if you're, need peace and quiet, definitely on the side of a highway with trucks going over. It's not super conducive to a restful night's sleep. And same goes with like Blanks and Raspberry. You can get there whenever you want. Paul, tent spot and our van spot. No, they're separate places. I'll send emails about camping later. I love offering this to you guys, but I will be honest, managing camping is a bane of my existence. Pacers included in the one parking pass, or can they get their additional one? Yeah, so good question, but absolutely are included in the one. You get one vehicle. That is it. Everybody is in that one vehicle. If you need to swing leads, all right. All right, am I back? Thumbs up me. No? God damn. There it is. Thanks, Katie. All right, I don't know what that was, but my computer decided it didn't want to talk to me for a minute. Let me switch my webcams. There we go. All right. Welcome to rural internet. Where was I? Parking pass. Yeah. So yeah, you got to have everybody in one vehicle. You can change vehicles, so if you want one to go one place, one to go to that place, totally fine. But one physical vehicle per aid station. Andrew, fantastic question. Any recommendations on places to fly fish while waiting for runners? Cottonwood Lake is a good lake to fish. That's kind of it, unfortunately. Most of our places are not by water. There is lots of great water to fish, but most of the time that you'd be close to it would be in the dark, unfortunately. So, but you should just come early and fish, and then stay late and fish, and just fish a lot, because fishing's fun. All right, other questions? Okay. Let's talk real quick about pacers. I'm assuming some of you are planning on pacing, or at least will interact with a pacer. This part's pretty straightforward. Just as an overview, in order to be a pacer at High Lonesome, you get a specific bib. It's a yellow bib that says pacer on it. That's all it says. You get it when you check in. You can check in on Thursday with your runner at like the pre-race pickup. That's totally fine. You can check in at the aid station you're picking your runner up from. So you can check in at Hancock, Monarch, Blanks, or Raspberry too. You have to carry the required gear that all the runners have to carry. So that involves a fairly extensive list. And that list is available so remember, I'm in this crew and pacing tab. I'm down here on pacing. And if I want to click and see the required gear list, just click this page and off it takes you to the required gear list. So there's a base list. Base list is something you carry, you, the pacer, and you, the runner, carry all the time, everywhere. You might have to carry more, but this is what you carry 100% of the time. It's a whistle. It's an emergency bivvy, not a space blanket. This is a key point, okay? So a space blanket is not a bivvy, and this has to be a Sol or knockoff version of Sol. Sol's the brand of this bivvy. And basically what this is it's a Mylar blanket shaped like a sleeping bag. So it's, it's a, I don't know what you want to call it. It's like a sock, right? You slide into the sock like a sleeping bag, and then it's coated with a stop rip coating that prevents this thing from shredding if it gets really windy. And that's a key safety point with why you have to carry this bivy. You have to carry 1.5 liters of water capacity. That means you have to have at least 1.5 liters in a bladder or a bottle or a combination of both, or a milk jug. I don't care how you get it. You don't have to have it full, but you just got to have to be able to carry it. Okay. And trust me, you're probably going to want all of it. So you should carry it full. An emergency light source, that's just keychain light, cell phone light. Some of the Garmin, maybe even Sunto and Coros watches now have like more than 10 lumen flashlights on their display screens. Those are all fine so long as you can turn it on and show a volunteer that it works. And so long as it's not obviously a glowworm. A waterproof jacket. This is another one that can often get mistaken. So a waterproof jacket has to have taped seams. That means when you turn the jacket inside out and you're looking at the inside, there's these little strips of tape. That tape covers all the holes that your sewing pokes into your waterproof membrane. Without that tape, your jacket's not waterproof, it's just water resistant. So it has to be a taped seamed jacket. So make sure you look at it. Collapsible cup. Highly recommend the accordion style ones like Sea to Summit or GSI. You can use the little hydro pack ones that they give out at most races these days that are kind of squishy. Those work just fine. I've seen people cut the tops off of water bottles. All it has to do is have a decent enough neck on it that you can eat soup, okay? Because if you've ever tried to eat soup out of one of those tiny little Solomon bottles, you know how useless that thing is for eating soup. So make sure it's a cup. Once you hit the divide, which is for pacers, going to be anything from Hancock to Monarch. And remember, that's a single stint, right? You can't switch pacers between that. So the only time you're going to have to worry about this divide gear is whomever is picking up your pacer or your runner first. Their first pacer is going to have to carry this additional gear. Once you get to Monarch, you can drop this gear and go back just to the base list. So this is called the divide gear because you're on the Continental Divide. This is a pair of pants, so it has to be a full length pair of pants. I don't want to see capris. I don't want to see like, you know, those sock calf things. I don't know what those are anymore. Pants, leggings, you can wear jeans, man, I don't care, but it's just got to cover you from like belly button to your ankle. All right. I carry a pair of running pants, just like one of those lightweight, really small packable ones. I usually switch to that when I race at night anyways, just because I don't like to be cold. So if you're wearing it, that's fine. If you're not wearing it, you have to pack it. 2 light sources. So that's basically just your redundant one you already had. So, you know, your flashlight on your cell phone or your watch or your keychain, and then whatever actual light you're planning on running with. So your headlamp, your waist belt, your both, whatever. But you just have to have like 2 light sources. So if one dies, you have a backup. A beanie or a buff can be either, and an extra layer. Has to be a long sleeve, and it can't be cotton. Cotton is absolutely useless as a thermal on your core. So best thing you can possibly carry, merino wool. God's greatest gift to sheep, okay? Carry merino wool. It works when it's wet. It retains all of its thermal properties. When wet, it dries relatively quickly. It has a minimal plastic component to it, so it's pretty friendly to the environment. And it's pretty easy to find these days. It used to be harder, now it's everywhere. So highly recommend that. So that's what you have to carry, but there's 2 other things that might come up. One for sure will, and that is a Corsair card. A Corsair card is a digital card you purchase from the state of Colorado. It's called a Colorado Search and Rescue, right? That's what Corsair stands for. And what this card is, it's not insurance. It basically says if you get injured and search and rescue is deployed, search and rescue can pull from a state fund to cover their expenses. In the state of Colorado, search and rescue is free. However, any medical component beyond search and rescue, so like Flight for Life, is not free. So that stuff is not covered in any regard. But this basically just allows you to make sure that our local search and rescues, in the event we unfortunately need them, are, you know, they're nonprofits. This is a key part for them being able to stay liquid. So the card costs $3 for a single year. It's dirt cheap. Costs like $6 for 5 years. I mean, I just buy a 5-year and then I just, you know, have a calendar reminder every 5 years to re-up it. It's great to have. Sometimes people ask if like a hunting license will count. Hunting license has a 25-cent SAR surcharge, but it is not a Corsair card. So a fishing license or a hunting license in Colorado will not cover this. does have to be a dedicated card. You don't have to have this physical thing on you. You just have to show proof of it when you get your bib. So when you, the pacer, show up to get your bib, photo of it on your phone, have it printed and laminated, however you like to do it, I don't care. You just have to be able to show it to a volunteer and say, here's my Corsair card. Boom, you're good to go. So that's really it. Pretty straightforward. There's a button for purchasing that on the bottom of this required gear page. The last thing is we have an endangered species called the boreal toad. It's a super adorable high alpine toad, only one in the state of Colorado. We have one of the best populations in the state, but our population is diminishing. So if you show up on Thursday and Thursday only, all the runners have to do this, and you pacers who want to show up early have to do it too. It's called the toad bath, and it's where you spray your shoes with this solvent that kills this fungus that is basically making the toads unable to breed. It vasectomizes the male toads, and then they just, populations die off. So this is called the toad bath. It's really easy. You basically spend like 2 minutes scrubbing your shoes, leave them out to dry while you go do the rest of your check-in. You come back out, you're good to go. So if you're there on Thursday, you'll be expected to do that. If you show up at the aid station, you show up at Hancock, anything during the race, you won't have to worry about the toad bath. So just one thing to be prepared for. All right, and then a couple of quick reminders. The process for it is detailed here. So you go to the aid station, you show them your card and your gear, you sign the waiver, you get your bib, and then it talks about the toad bath. It just summarizes what I just talked about. Here's your check-in locations where you can get a pacer bib. It's all the crew accessible aid stations, as well as the check-in at the start. The runner check-in on Thursday. It covers the pacing and a couple of rules I just want to cover and some overviews. So if you're over 65, you can have a pacer from the start. If you have a medical condition that would make having a pacer a significantly better safety experience for everybody, reach out. We can talk about that and probably get you a pacer earlier. Highly recommend for the first pacer chunk, Hancock to Monarch, like, you want experienced runners here. Yes, people do pacing for the first time in these sections and presumably do just fine. But this is the spot where, like, you want to pull your A team for this chunk. Like, this is where you want your first draft pick on your pacer. And so I highly recommend that. If you have someone who's like wants to dabble and they're looking to pace, but maybe they're not ready to run 20, 30 miles, Raspberry to the Finish. That's such a great section. Super chill. It's really fun. It's high energy, usually because you're there basically and you're just wrapping up. So recommend that. No muling. Muling is you carrying something of the runners or something for the runners. So what that looks like is, you can't take their gear and put it in your pack. They have to carry, if you disappear, they've got to have everything they're supposed to have, right? So imagine an alien comes here, zaps you, off you go. Is your runner still legal? Yes. Okay, that's fine. So some things that often happen is like people will start like pulling gels and start handing them from their pacer to their runner. That's not allowed. That's muling. You carried food for them, so you can't be handing stuff off to them. Now, in aid stations, you can shuffle that stuff just fine, right? Because that's what aid stations are for. And we're not the Tour de France. Like, we don't have cameras on you at every second. So there's an honor system here. Please abide by it. If your runner drops some trash and you pick it up and you carry their trash, like, potato. But I don't really want to see you guys like carrying a bunch of stuff for your runner. And if we do, it's happened once, we're going to have to disqualify the runner because of it, but we're actually dropping, so we didn't end up having to. But it is something we watch for and we take seriously. One caveat to this is runners can help runners as much as they want. So if a runner is running past you and is bonking and you're like, dude, you want something? Like, we love that, right? That is camaraderie. We want you to support each other. You're both carrying the same stuff, so it doesn't matter. But it's just the pacers we want to watch for. And then lastly, pacers have to be 18 or older. I do make fairly often exceptions for that, but I need to know ahead of time because there's a few additional things we have to cover just to make sure that we aren't putting someone out in the course that isn't really prepared for that. So email me, the RD, to discuss. And that is it. Okay, questions about pacing or crewing or anything at this point? Wide open floor. Man, crickets. You've either all gone to sleep. Yes, Eileen is asking, can I provide the link to the drive time chart from station to station? I can. For those that are watching this later, it is on the volunteering tab. So if you go to the volunteering page, scroll all the way to the bottom, it's a big page. Boom, that's your drive time chart. So that link for folks in the meeting, right there. Good question. More? Others? Jay asks, just to clarify, no spectating at St. Elmo. That is correct. St. Elmo is 100% private. There is no public parking. So in order to be in St. Elmo, you have to patronize the stores. And just to keep things simple, the town mayor essentially asked us to say, no High Lonesome spectators at St. Elmo. However, it's well worth a visit just to see it. So it's a great pre-race activity, post-race activity. Highly recommend checking out the town, but not during the race. Good question. Russell asks, do we need to bring the pacer waiver to the race course, or will there be waivers at the aid station when we grab our runner? Another good question. We will have the waivers basically taped to the tables or laminated and taped to the tables. And then we have pacers sign in like sheets where basically it's just like, you know, name, date, sign, name, date, sign. We get like 20 signatures per page. So you don't have to bring anything. We'll have a version there. Obviously, you should read the waiver. If you're like me, you never do. Basically, it says you owe me all your money and I get first dibs on your whiskey. I'm kidding. It's all your boilerplate stuff, but we'll have it there and you don't have to bring it. Good questions. Keep them coming. You guys like how my dog is just perched on this couch, looking out a window wistfully? We spent like 8 hours outside today and she's like, I need more. Oh, that's Kelsey in the background. At the end of the day, man. All right, Meg asks, if you're wearing a long sleeve t-shirt to leave Hancock, does that count as your extra layer? It does. You just have to have it on you. You can wear it or carry it, either one, but you don't have to pack two things just because you're wearing one. Good question though. You are, just as a heads up, this is like a pro tip on the gear thing. Your runners get their gear checked at Cottonwood, Hancock, and the start line. Now the start line is pretty easy because you got tons of time and there's, you know, you're not in a huge rush. But at Cottonwood and Hancock, here's your pro tips. You have to show everything. So you bring your pack and you set it on a table and there's a volunteer with a list and they're looking at your stuff and you have to pull it all out and show them what you've got. So don't spend a ton of time packing your kit before gear check, because then you just have to repeat the process. So the easiest thing to do is like kind of have your stuff in a pile, put it on the table, and as you're showing them your stuff, pack it. That way you're going in at the same time. And it saves you, you know, from spending a couple of wasted minutes in the aid looking around for gear. As pacers, you show your stuff earlier, so you're not in a huge rush. The only place you'll be checked as you leave is Hancock. So even if you showed your gear and got your bib like 2 hours earlier, when you go to leave the aid station, you have to re-show that gear. It's a check-out process. So don't be surprised if it happens to you. Everywhere else, it's just when you pick up your bib and then, you know, kind of honor system. Lindsay asks, this won't happen, of course, but if a runner gets cut off at a non-crew station, do you provide a way for them to get back, or does the crew come to get them? 99% of the time, we will get the runner back to some point to get them to crew. If it's at a crew accessible aid station and they don't have a crew, we get them rides usually with crews, right? So we're just, you know, hey, are you going somewhere? Okay, can you take this person kind of thing. If it's a non-crew accessible aid station, they have to wait. And sometimes it can be a really long wait. And sometimes that wait is long enough to just get the runner to keep running and go to the next aid station. And we've had that happen every year where someone spends hours at an aid station that ends up finishing the race. There's only one section where we have a choreographed process. So Hancock all the way back. So Hancock, working backwards, that's Hancock, Tin Cup, St. Elmo, Cottonwood, Antero, and Raspberry. All of those runners, if they dropped, would be pulled back to the start line at some point. So when a volunteer is leaving, if I'm leaving that aid station, I'll take someone out, that kind of stuff. So we're going to bring them back to the start finish line. And then from there, if they have the car, great. If they have to coordinate, whatever. But like that's kind of the HQ. And then the same process is for Fooses all the way back to the finish line. So Fooses, Chavano, Blanks, Raspberry 2, all go back to the start line. So the only variance here is Lost Wonder and Purgatory. And those two will get brought back to Monarch. And then from Monarch, they'll either get a ride back with their crew or we'll get them a ride back with a crew. So either way, don't worry about it. But like, it's going to be a long wait. There've been people who've waited 6 hours to get out of Hancock because no one's leaving. So, but a valid question. Hopefully, you won't need to worry about it because you'll just be at the finish line when you're done. More questions? Okay, I'm gonna give you guys 10 more seconds and then I'm gonna go have some dinner. All right, last chance. All right, well, thanks everybody for jumping on. Really appreciate you guys planning so diligently. This is awesome. I hope all of you have a fantastic race experience. If you have more questions, check out the website and the runner's guide, pacer guide, crew manual, all that kind of stuff. And then if you don't see that, shoot me an email. This is Hans and Kelsey. They wish you well as well. But yeah, take care, guys. We'll see you in 10 days. Hard to say, but we'll see you soon.